know what, man? When you're coming into another month, we're in July now. You got to ease into it. Halfway through the year, you gotta find out what's going on. See what's changed. Because now you got enough time to look back over the year and reflect on those New Year's resolutions, or New Year's resolutions, as I like to call them, and see if you're halfway or you got a little more work to put into it. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna put together a little financial introspective and say finance literature, the process, time, and wealth building. We're gonna keep it simple. I don't get a lot of PowerPoint slides, but I'm gonna keep it simple and I'm gonna go ahead and ease us into it like the song and the beat says. Now, what we doing today? Okay, well, let's take a look. You know what? I was doing a little research before I started the podcast today, and it was on just finding out on YouTube where I could find out some wealth building tools or tips. And there's a myriad of information out there, and I'm always wondering, what's the best delivery method? And I'm like, I do my old school because I remember we always remember that old school things we get taught. Hey, it's raining and lightning outside. Go ahead and shut everything down and stop moving. Things like that. Don't touch that hot stove because that hot stove is hot. But sometimes we got to touch that hot stove. So I said, well, you know what? We're in July. We just passed over Juneteenth. And I said, you know what? I want to do something to keep that foundation going of just building wealth and understanding financial literacy and developing processes and things of that nature. And that's the thing about it is, I think people think that wealth building is a job or a task. You got to go out there and you got to just jump into it. Or if you're not doing it, you're behind the power curve. It's never too late or too early to start. And I think that's the misconception being out there is, oh man, you 58 years old, you can't start. You can start. You might not just have as much at the end of the road if you just start a little bit earlier, but not starting leaves with the same thing, zero. So at the end of the day, let's take a look at a couple of things or a couple of tools and a couple of processes that'll help you build wealth. I keep it simple. I don't do a bunch of PowerPoint slides. Tell you the truth, I only do two. And this is what we're going to start with. Roadmap to wealth building. Now, there's a couple of categories that are going to be fundamental no matter what you do. So for everybody that wants to read the hard books, no matter what you do, same basic fundamentals. You got to have a tool, got to have financial literacy, got to have a process, got to have a time horizon, and you got to have a goal. You can never go wrong if you set this up like this. Never. It's never been unsuccessful. History has shown that it's successful. We see people that we consider to be rich, wealthy, or just in a comfortable place in life. Well, they also had to have a tool. So that's what we're going to kick it off with the first one. But we're going to keep it simple because the more complex you make something, it seems like it's important. But in actuality, it's pretty simple. First one, it's a box or a container or a shoebox. We don't care what it is. But the goal is find yourself a container, take your loose change or dollar bills for some of y'all, and drop it in the box and create a habit of doing it every once in a while, every month, every day, whatever works for you. But you want to create that habit because that habit creates discipline to a process. Now, you may wonder why I got kids' language on there. Think about it. When you go to the bookstore, I don't care what bookstore you go to, you're going to find different levels of books, different levels of books written for different audience. Now, here's the thing. There's also a kids book section. Now, ask yourself this. Riddle me this, Batman. Why would there be a kids book section? Because they want kids to be able to understand the same information to a certain extent that adults understand that same information. And here's the best thing about kids books. They take out all the jargon, all the high level words that make it seem like it's so complex to do. Now, think about it. If you take money and put it into a box or a container, you're really just creating a habit. Now, if you go to a kid's book on how to build wealth, they're going to tell you start simple. So that's what we're doing. Our tool is simple and it's repeatable. It's a process that you can repeat. Anytime I break a dollar bill and I got some change left over, my first thought is when I get home, drop it in my box. Now, for you old school cats, you used to put it in the ashtray in the car. Well, them days are over. If you smoke, you use your ashtray for smoking. But if you did, that was your change receptacle. So at the end of the day, you're going to create a process that's repeatable. It becomes a habit, like brushing your teeth every morning or brushing your teeth at night. You're going to drop that change in there. And then you're going to say over time, it's going to compound. You're going to have more change in there, more change in there. And most people will set a goal for that change. Some people will say, okay, you know what? This is going to be my spending money on vacation. That one vacation you may take once a year, you want to already have your spending money. You know what the beauty about this goal is? You can do it for whatever. If you're a young person growing up, you want to cut grass, you put a percentage of your money in a container. And you say at the end of that, I want to buy a car. You already know what your goal is. But we want to keep building wealth simple. And this is the simplest tool ever. Because at the end of the day, you can go by, you can look in your box, you can count your change out, you can do whatever you want to do, but you're saying, I got a goal. And my goal is, I might just want to go and buy me a video game. Okay, well, you got your game there. You got whatever your goal is set for. Now, here's the beauty of this box or container. You can buy a box or container that already reaches your goal. And what I mean is, I have some stuff from Hobby Lobby. Those containers hold exactly $380. So I know when I get to the top of that, I know I got $380 in there. So just keep in mind, no matter what you use, keep it simple. Now we're gonna go a little different. And this next tool is stocks. And now here's the beautiful about stocks. People are gonna give you all the question and answer about stocks you want. My recommendation is go to a kid's book. It basically tells you that you own part of the company. And as an owner part of the company, you're gonna get what we call, if the company has excess money, you'll get what we call dividends. They're going to pay you per stock. So let's say, for instance, you got Coca-Cola stock because we all drink Coca, Pepsi. And at the end of the day, they said every quarter, which is every 4 months, they're going to pay you $1. So for owning one share, you're going to get $4 a year. Now, some people will scarf at that. No, not $4. That's only $4. First of all, you ain't got $4, so stop playing. We're going to put a process in place that's repeatable, but we're going to build those dividends up. Because after having $4 a year, we want to get to $8 a year. Well, in order to get to $8, you got to have two shares of stocks. Now, don't go out and try to figure out what's the next complicated stock. We're not doing that. We're not chasing anybody else's investments on stocks. You're going to look for stocks that pay dividends in what you know. Now, if you have kids and they look at Disney Channel, they know Disney. They know the different movies that are out. If they play video games, I'm pretty sure there's a stock in the video games. Buy them something that they're interested in. Now, we as adults need to buy stuff that we know about. The best way to do that is look at the industry in which that you work, or look at the products that you shop for at a grocery store and see if it's something that, hey, that pays as a stock and also pays dividends. And what you want to do is you want to accumulate stocks that pay dividends. Ultimately, you want to be able to use those dividends to buy stocks. That's your first goal. I want to own enough stock where my stock dividends buy stocks for me. Now, here's the trick to it. If you buy a stock that's $25, you kind of already know how many shares of the stock you need in order to buy one share. Keep it simple. You don't want to grow this and say, oh man, I want this hot stock. Well, that's not what we're doing. You can't be on old school if you get ahead of the program. The program said buy stock that pay dividends that you can afford until that stock pays for itself. That is not rocket science. Now, if you want to read up on stocks, go to the kids section in the bookstore and get a kids book on stocks. Don't overdo it. Don't go over here to this $25 book that somebody's written and they give you this whole nice breakdown of stocks, but you pay $25 for the book when you could have got a book for worth $5. Don't overplay your hand. $5 book works every time. So just keep in mind buying stocks that you know, buying stock that pays dividends, and also buying stocks that you want to build up that's going to pay dividends to the point where they start buying themselves. Now, that is real simple. We don't have to be complex about it. Now, there's going to be a time where you're going to grow and elevate. Don't get me wrong. You're going to know what the candlestick chart is. You're going to know what the debt to income ratio, all that stuff will factor into this process, but not at the beginning. At the beginning, you just want to know, how do I buy stock? Now, I'm a lover of Coca Cola, but I go to restaurants and they be like, would you like Pepsi? You know what I say? I'll take Pepsi. But if you look at it from an investment perspective, you know that the top two sellers are Coca Pepsi. So you can't go wrong with those stocks. But look to see if they pay dividends, how long they've been paying dividends. All this stuff is on the internet. You can look it up. Old school says look it up, know for yourself. Don't have to get it from somebody else. I say go to the bookstore, get a kid's books on stocks, and keep it moving. Now we're going to move over to mutual funds. And these are some of the things that are the first part of investing. So, hey, a mutual fund, a collection of people that invest in the same investment. Now, you want to be able to understand how a mutual fund works in your benefit. One of the benefits is somebody else runs the mutual fund, but you have to pick the mutual fund. So, go to a kid's book. It's going to break it down for you. It's going to tell you what an index fund is. It's going to tell you what a small cap fund is. It's going to tell you what an international fund is. All the funds out there, bonds funds, you have different companies that want to sell you mutual funds. Now, here's the trick that you want to do. You want to get an index fund, which we're going to go over in the next slide, but you want what's called a systematic investment. The trick to the systematic investment, it takes money every month from your account. So let's say you systematically invest $50 a month. Cool. Guess what that can do over time? And I found that once the money is gone, you don't miss it. Most people spend what they can see. If you got it already set up, systematic investment, I did it when I was like 1992, and it automatically took $50 out of my account. I did not miss that $50. Matter of fact, if it weren't for that $50 coming out, I would truly be broken and broke because I spent the rest of the money on whatever, couldn't tell you. So at 22, I was spending, but I did have a systematic investment into an actual mutual fund. And then I could watch it build over time. Now, what you want to do is you want to build you a nice mutual fund portfolio up and say, you know what? I know it's a good mutual fund because I read the books. Also, go to a kid's book. And at the end of the day, say, you know what? For a year, I want to see how this works. Now, here's the beauty of it. Those stocks that are in those mutual funds that are paying you dividends are also paying dividends in your mutual funds. And that money goes back and reinvested in making your actual investment bigger. The ultimate goal is accumulation over time. I was reflective as I was looking at Juneteenth and reading up on the history of Juneteenth and what it means and how it's now a national holiday. But ultimately, we can't replace time. We can do a process, but we can't replace the time. There's always going to be things in history that we would try to do or undo, but at the end of the day, we need time in order to see the building of wealth. Now, this is something that you can start as an adult. You can share with your kids. There's nothing super advanced about this. And the thing about this is, no matter what time or history, this has been the same type of investments. Investing, savings, and mutual funds. They've always been there. You can look them up, you can Google them, you can ask Siri, whoever you want to talk to. These investment tools have always been there. I've not shared anything new. I've only put perspective on a way to actually understand them better. Keep it simple. I like simple stuff. Like I said before, I don't do a lot of slides. Here you go. A nice little breakdown. We'll start with savings first. Savings biweekly, because most of us get paid biweekly. Every 2 weeks, we get a paycheck. Put aside $50. That's $100 monthly. That's $1,200 a year. Now, I've ran into people and as they're drinking their Starbucks coffee, you know what they tell me? Man, Abe, I don't have no money to invest. Now, as you're drinking your Starbucks coffee, standing in your new Nike shoes with your new polo shirt on, I'm looking at you thinking to myself, you have money for something. You just didn't have the money to do this part of it. You got money because you're spending money. Now, if you look at the media and you listen to the news, they would have you believe that we're just the biggest consumers ever. Now, here's the thing about the news and the media. They're showing you what they want you to see. They're not showing what you should be looking at or what you should be understanding. I was doing a Google thing before I got in here and I was doing a little stuff on YouTube looking for wealth building tools. The first three articles were great. After that, you're going down a rabbit hole of stuff that has nothing to do with the topic that you're searching for on YouTube. So you have to put yourself in a position where you are building wealth through tools that you understand and you respect. So here's the thing about it is saving $50 a week every 2 weeks is not going to be an overwhelming task for the most. Because if I'm standing there and you got a Starbucks cup in your hand, you got $50 every 2 weeks. Plain and simple. If you're at Chick-fil-A, if you're at McDonald's, if you're stopping somewhere, what you have to understand is there is no gain through no sacrifice. What? Yeah. You can't get nowhere if you don't sacrifice something. And you're sacrificing $100 a month. Now, this can be built up into your emergency savings, whatever. And you can use it to buy into your stocks. You can use it to buy into your mutual fund. Everything builds upon itself. But it starts with the ability to save. That's why I say create a box. You can take that box and the money saved in that box or that container and use it to buy stocks. Now, I said before, you want to buy stocks that pay you dividends. And eventually you want those dividends to be able to buy those stocks. Because now, guess what? You don't have to invest in it anymore. Every quarter, you will buy stocks. At some point in the life of those stocks will start paying for things that are even bigger. But you gotta build the foundation. You can't build the foundation in the middle. Now, you may get a windfall of money from, let's say, a death in the family, unfortunately, or you won the lottery, or you won a small amount of money. No matter the amount of money that you ever win in life, if you don't have the education with it, you're doomed to go back to the situation that you know best, and that is spending. So this is simple. Build a foundation. Building a foundation has nothing to do with the amount that you build it with. It has to do with the habits that you create. So create good habits in selecting the stocks, find stocks that pay dividends, and understand the stock that you purchase. I love Disney World. I've been to pretty much all the Disney World except for one in the globe. And here's the beauty of it. Disney caters to a group of people who don't have jobs. I'm talking about our nieces, our nephews, our daughters, our sons. We want them to share that same experience, but ultimately they ain't got no job. And they don't have no job. They can't pay for the popcorn, the food, or the trip, or anything else. But we're gonna take them there. Or auntie's gonna take them there, or uncle's gonna take them there. And we're gonna spend money at that park. We're gonna do it every generation over and over because we had such a great experience doing it. And for the folks that have never been there before, we see all the movies. We see the Marvel movies. We see everything that captivate us to say, I want somebody else to share in this experience. So I do purchase Disney stocks because they cater to people who ain't got jobs, which I think is great because we're gonna always have kids and they're gonna always want to have to share that experience. Now, mutual funds, and I said I was going to reflect back on this on an index fund. You know exactly what an index fund is. Because if you're looking at the slides now, you recognize most of the companies in an index fund. And there are different types of index funds. You got to do your research on that. Go to a kid's book because they're going to keep it simple. But here's a little snippet of what's in an index fund. Top 10 holdings are the first thing I look at in an index fund. And the reason why I look at the top 10 holdings is I want to be able to understand what is in that investment. And do I know anything about it? Here's an example. Microsoft number one. We all know Microsoft. If you touch a computer, you know Microsoft. So Apple. We all know about Apple or Android or whatever, but we know what the word Apple stands for and how it is in the market. We got the Apple phone, Apple watches, Apple computers. So we know about that. NVIDIA, you know about it, but you don't know about it by that name. But if you play video games, you know about number three. And that's your wheelhouse right there. Amazon, if you don't know about Amazon, you live up under a rock. Stop shopping under a rock because Amazon is right there. Now, what you may not know about Amazon is a cloud provider to a lot of different companies. Shipping household goods and different things that you purchase on Amazon is just a side shooter to what they do for real. Now, Meta platform may throw you off, but it used to be known as Facebook. Berkshire Hathaway. You may not know who Berkshire Hathaway Investment is, but you know who Warren Buffett is. And if you know who Warren Buffett is, you know who Berkshire Hathaway is. So, and there you go. There's six stocks that are in that index fund that you're familiar with. So, there's nothing that we talked about today that's so overwhelming, so just demanding of your intellect that you couldn't put this into play tomorrow. So remember now, we're in July. Half the year is almost gone again, and you have time to start a process and look back on it before we come back around to the New Year's resolutions. Now, it wouldn't be a good show if I didn't end it with some hot stove topics. If you don't know what the hot stove topic is, talk to your auntie and auntie. They'll tell you what a hot stove is. Don't follow somebody else. If you're gonna make a mistake, make your own mistake. Don't make somebody else's mistake. And that's that hot stove topic closes out today. Y'all enjoy the rest of this year. I look forward to creating some more content that's helpful to build a financial wealth building tool or breaking it down for you, keeping it simple. But simple don't mean successful. Simple execution makes it successful. So let's get out there, y'all. Let's execute. Hey, shoot me some questions if you got some questions. I'm here. And that's another episode of Old School Wealth Building with Abraham and Friends.